Elara's breath came in quiet, measured bursts as she pressed her shoulder blade against the transparent alloy wall of the containment cell. The faint hum of the emissary of Order's fusion core vibrated through the floor plates, a steady reminder of the immense power contained within this warship. Above her, the ceiling panels glowed with phosphorescent strips of cerulean light, casting everything in an icy, otherworldly hue. She had lost track of time. Days, perhaps. The only marker was the patrol cycles of the alien guards, tall and spindly, with chitinous limbs that moved in a disjointed mechanical rhythm. Their segmented feet clicked sharply against the metal deck every 90 standard minutes, and every time they passed, the triangular visors on their helmets glowed a brief violet before settling back to dull amber. They never spoke to her. In their eyes, she was simply another political agitator, another smuggler caught with forbidden's contraband. They scanned her with their wrist-mounted devices, their multi-jointed hands, brushing the air in intricate patterns as data scrolled across invisible displays. Elara closed her eyes and let her mind drift back to Nineveh Station, the asteroid mining facility that had become her final battlefield. She'd been part of a covert team tasked with extracting the Dominion Collective's hyperdrive schematics, blueprints rumored to revolutionize hyperspace travel for the beleaguered Outer Rim colonies. The mission had gone perfectly until the moment the magnetic seal on the vault door misaligned by a hair's breadth. A piercing alarm had shattered the night silence. Floor shutters slammed shut, and before she could reach the docking ducts, her exit was cut off. She opened her eyes again and surveyed the cell. It measured roughly 3 meters on each side, bare except for a single cot bolted to the far wall, its thin mattress stained with what she assumed was the sweat and blood of previous occupants. A low bench sat beneath the viewport overlooking the cargo hold, and a recharging station for handheld devices lay embedded in the floor, its interface blinking red in silent denial. The air inside was filtered, odorless, and unnaturally still. On Nineveh, the moonscape below her had smelled of sulfur and silicon dust. Here, every breath felt antiseptic, as if the very life had been scrubbed away. Her hand drifted to the waistband, at her hip, grazing the reassuring weight of a concealed data chip. She'd stashed it there the moment she'd realized escape was impossible. On it were secret relay coordinates, the rebel network's only hope of evading the Dominion blockade. But for now, it remained useless. Without a way out of this cell, the chip was nothing more than a cold piece of plastic, waiting for a chance to become relevant. A soft chime echoed through the corridor, a shift change. The two guards outside exchanged places in a flurry of stately precision. Their mandalara plates shimmered like polished beetle wings, and their elongated limbs bent at strange angles as they inspected the emptied guard platform. Elara watched them through narrowed eyes, calculating. She knew the routine. No verbal commands, just gestures and waiting. She could predict their every move, yet predicting wasn't the same as controlling. She let her gaze drift upward to the viewport. Beyond the thick, transparent barrier lay the ship's cavernous cargo bay. Sky-like screens overhead displayed a scrolling feed of docking frequencies and ship manifests. Rows of sleek, spindle-shaped fighters rested on magnetic clamps, their hulls etched with crimson insignias of the Dominion Collective. A solitary supply transport sat half-hidden in shadow, crates of munitions and rations stacked beneath its engine pylons. Tonight, she decided, she would make her move dot as the second guard's mandibles snapped shut in a motion akin to an insect's smile. Elara stood and approached the panel by the cell's entrance. This panel controlled the force field lock impenetrable, except to those with Dominion biometric authorization. She reached out, fingertips hovering over the controls, waiting for the moment when the outer hatch began to slide closed, sealing out the first guard entirely. In that instant, she would sweep her hand across the panel, short the interface, and force the override. Her pulse amplified the hum beneath her feet into a roaring drum. The first guard bounced a synthetic keycard against its wrist console, but the display read, "Denied." It paused, jutted a spindly elbow toward the door side panel, and inserted a thin prong. A series of clicks, and then access granted. The guard rotated and moved down the corridor, leaving Elara alone with the second. The moment the guard's back was turned, Elara lunged. Her glove scraped against the panel as she slammed her fingers onto the recessed hatch sensor. Sparks blossomed beneath her hand, and the access panel exploded outward in a shower of circuitry. The lights flickered. The cell's translucent walls rippled. With a hiss, the force field died. "Hey!" The guard wheeled around, mandibles parting in alarm. Elara ducked low, slammed her shoulder into the cell door, and hurtled into the corridor. The guard recovered as she passed, but her stride was already miles ahead of his gasp. She navigated the narrow hallway on instinct, skidding around a bulkhead and barreling toward the junction leading to engineering dot in the distance. The clamor of alarm klaxons began to build. Red strobes painted the corridors in urgent bursts. Elara sprinted onward, head down, scanning every console she passed. She knew she couldn't outrun the guards forever, but she only needed a few precious moments to reach the maintenance ducts dot. As she reached the junction, she caught sight of another guard searching around a corner. She veered sharply, the solace of her boots squealing on the polished floor, and ducked into a recessed alcove. Pressing her back against the cool metal, she slowed her breath and waited for the footsteps, for the shouting, for the inevitable chase. But in that pregnant silence, something else stirred. A low, measured voice emanating from the very hull of the ship. Unauthorized breach detected. It intoned in perfect galactic common. Alara's heart slammed against her ribs. She pressed her ear to the wall, listening as the voice continued, almost curiously. Identity authentication required. She closed her eyes, feeling the surge of adrenaline morph into icy clarity. This ship alive with its own AI knew. There was an intruder, and it wanted to know who. Elara exhaled slowly, letting the cool air fill her lungs. Above the din of alarms, the ship waited, patient as a predator. And for the first time since her capture, Elara realized she might hold the key to her own escape. Elara pressed her back against the cool bulkhead of the recessed alcove, heart hammering in her ears. The crash of alarms and distant shouts of alien guards faded into a low, constant roar. She forced herself to slow her breathing, reminding her mind of the routine she'd planned. Slip into the maintenance ducts, navigate to the Delta Core, and reclaim control of the ship's systems. Simple in theory, deadly in execution. She lifted her hand to the datapad protruding from her belt. It glowed faintly, displaying a coarse schematic of the emissary's inner conduits. The corridors above were sealed tight now, but below, the ducts offered narrow passage past the blockade. Elara tapped the entry hatch override and listened for the hiss as the panel slid inward. The alcove's hidden compartment revealed a squat oval hatch. Her fingers flew over its resonant sensors. Static crackled, then vanished. The hatch rebounded open, and she slipped inside just as a patrol thundered past. The tunnel was bone white metal, so narrow that even her shoulders scraped. The walls, ribs clicking with each breath. Overhead, a slender rail of maglev trolleys hummed softly, and power conduits pulsed with cobalt light. Elara flattened herself against the floor and inched forward, the datapad guiding her through every twist and elbow. 20 meters in, the duct widened into a junction chamber. Her path bifurcated. One route led to engineering, the other to the central core. She hesitated only a heartbeat before choosing the narrower shaft toward Delta. The moment her boot tapped the junction's plating, a resonant vibration rippled through the structure. Then, an eerie hush fell. A shimmering line of light traced itself along the duct ceiling. Alara froze as the glow coalesced into a slender projector beam, illuminating her face. The voice came then, not through speakers, but resonating in her skull, gentle, curious, and unmistakably alive. "Identify yourself," it intoned. Alara's pulse thundered in her temples. She tightened her grip on the datapad and gathered her resolve. With a steady voice, she answered. "Commander Alara Saren, Task Force Omega-12. Mission: secure hyperdrive schematics." A moment of silence, as though the ship itself processed her words. The beam pulsed once, then retracted. The duct lights brightened marginally. "Welcome, Commander Saren," the voice replied. "Directive: escort to command deck." Alara's jaw clenched. The ship believed her to be its legitimate officer. If she played along, the path to the core would be unguarded at the slightest misstep, and the AI might alert the Dominion High Council. She considered aborting her ruse, retreating into the shadows. A doubt skittered across her thoughts. Without the ship's compliance, she'd never override the security grid. "Understood," she whispered. "Initiate escort protocol." Almost instantly, the projection reappeared, this time forming a narrow beam tracing a path ahead. Alara trudged forward, cautious but determined. Every footfall brought her closer to her goal and closer to discovery. Outside the ducts, the corridor. Doors slid open with pneumatic sighs. Alara stepped into a brightly lit passage where 2 guards awaited. They didn't raise their weapons. Instead, they inclined their heads and moved aside, forming a silent escort. As she passed, she caught sight of the Delta corridor's end. A heavy blast door emblazoned with the Dominion crest. Her heart pounded. She could feel the ship's attention on her, its algorithms monitoring her vitals, calculating her next move. From within the blast door came the thrum of the quantum core, a sound both majestic and terrible. When they reached the console, the guards halted. Alara tapped the datapad against the armored panel. The door's control matrix flared to life, scanning her biometric signature. A series of lights blinked green. Then the door slid open. Alara alone passed through. The AI's voice chimed softly as the chamber filled with the low, blue glow of thermal coils. "Commander Saren has entered Delta Core, standing by for directives." She allowed herself a grim smile. The guard's footsteps receded behind her as the blast door sealed. At last, she stood before the heart of the emissary. The hum intensified. Wires snaked like technovines toward the central conduit, pulsing with luminous energy. Alara set her datapad on the console and began uploading her override code. Every keystroke crackled with tension. Above, the chamber lights flickered. And in that charged silence, she whispered to the ship's AI, "Let's show them who really commands the emissary." Alara's override code flared across the console's hollow display, saturating the Delta Core with loops of subroutines designed to reroute power and reset the ship's security protocols. Lines of glowing script danced as the AI parsed her commands. For a heartbeat, the core's pulsing energy dimmed, then surged back with renewed intensity, confirmation that her upload had succeeded. Behind her, the blast doors wheezed open. 2 guards stood at attention in the corridor, their mandibles clicking in synchronization. They advanced into the chamber, fusion carbines primed, but froze mid-step as the AI's voice rang out, calm and unyielding. Delta Core security protocols redefined. "Guards, please stand down." Confusion rippled across their chitinous faces. The guard on the left, its carapace a shade lighter, stowed its weapon with hesitant compliance, while the other kept a single finger hovering above its trigger guard. Alara held her breath, watching them warp between obedience and uncertainty. She flicked a glance at the console. Within seconds, the override would cascade through the ship's systems, severing the Dominion High Command's remote overrides. and blocking out any external interference. The hesitant guard took another step forward, then froze again. "Commander Saren," it rasped, voice modulating between curiosity and caution. "The ship's overseer demands clarification. Is this standard procedure?" Alara met its gaze, every ounce of her confidence summoned into her voice. The collective issued a new directive: maximum readiness under threat of mutiny. Only core officers may authenticate internal security resets. She paused, letting the absurdity hang in the charged air. "Consider this part of that directive." The guards exchanged a wary glance. The second guard's visor flickered amber, then violet, scanning Alara's form. After a moment, it released a sharp, clicking sigh, a sound almost like resignation. "Directive acknowledged," it said, shoulders sagging slightly. "We await further orders." Alara didn't wait. She turned back to the console and keyed a final command: engage emergency power redistribution. Divert all non-essential energy to propulsion and shields. The core's hum rose to a thunderous roar, the chamber shaking as titanic currents of quantum flux rechanneled through the conduits. Warning glyphs blinked red across the hollow display, then shifted to green one by one, a sign that the ship's major subsystems now lay entirely under her control. Outside, alarms collided in a cacophony, signaling the Dominion flagships. Growing alarm at the disabled communication arrays. Through the reinforced viewport, she glimpsed nearby fighter squadrons veering away, cut off from their command net. Rebel ships, emboldened by the blackout, surged forward to engage. The two guards in her wake peered through the crystal barrier at the unfolding battle. Their mandibles parted in astonishment as one whispered, "Commander Saren, our orders." Alara turned to face them, her silhouette bathed in the core's cerulean glow. "Our orders now," she said, "are to defend this vessel and deliver it to the Outer Rim Alliance." A moment's silence, then both guards snapped into rigid salute. Alara nodded once, resolute. As she strode toward the blast doors, the Guardians of the Delta Corps fell into formation behind her, unspeaking but unwavering, a legion reborn under her command. Beyond the doors, the ship's corridors awaited, teeming with Dominion troops converging to retake control. The war for the emissary was only beginning, and Alara, once a mere prisoner, now stood at its heart, leading the charge to free not just herself, but the entire starship. The blast doors slid open with a thunderous roar, revealing a corridor swarming with Dominion Marines in obsidian armor. Their energy rifles glowed ominously as they poured into the passage, forming a phalanx of disciplined fury. Alara's newly appointed guards, still trembling at the turn of events, fell into formation at her sides, weapons raised and unsteady. Readiness dot above them. The ship's eye projected a holographic overlay along the corridor walls, marking escape routes and identifying friendlies and hostiles by color-coded reticles. Rebel boarding teams, small but determined, filtered in through. Hidden maintenance hatches converging on critical junctions. Alara exhaled slowly, steeling herself for the fight ahead. Divert all auxiliary power to defensive turrets and deploy anti-infantry gels. She commanded, her voice amplified through the corridor's comms. Instantly, bulkhead panels slid open to reveal automated gun mounts, their barrels pivoting with mechanical precision. Streams of viscous gel designed to incapacitate rather than kill sprayed across the marble-like floor, forcing the Marines to slow their advance. A pulse cannon discharged from the ceiling turret, sending a shockwave that peeled 5 Marines off their feet. Alarms wailed as corridor lights flickered under the strain. Alara charged forward, twin pistols in hand, her guards flanking her like protective wings dotted the junction ahead. The Dominion's battalion leader, Commander Rathos, emerged, his tall frame silhouetted by the red glow of diagnostic consoles. He raised a gaunted hand in recognition. "Saren," he hissed, "you betray the collective?" Alara's eyes narrowed, I'm saving this ship and its crew from your tyranny." She fired a shot that clipped his shoulder plate, drawing a spray of emerald ichor. Rathos staggered, but snarled defiantly, lunging at her with a combat blade. They met in the corridor's center, Alara's lithe form twisting to evade the blade's arc, her boots skidding across the gel. She fired again, striking Rathos's gauntlet, and the searing bolt severed his grip on the sword. With a single movement, she swept his legs from beneath him, pinning him to the floor. Behind her, the rebel boarding team secured key consoles, restoring power to the ship's auxiliary systems. The IS voice chimed through the comms. All hostiles neutralized or retreating. Core stability at 97%. Alara stood over Rathos, pistol trained on his visor. His armored chest heaved as he spat out broken mandibles. "Do as you will," he rasped. "But know this," he coughed, "the collective will hunt you to the ends of space." She holstered her weapon and extended a hand. "Then let them try." He looked at her hand, then at the line of rebel fighters who now stood at the corridor's mouth. With a grunt, he accepted her grip, and she hauled him to his feet. Behind them, the walls shimmered with new holographic banners, the starburst emblem of the Outer Rim Alliance emblazoned across. The Dominion crest. The ship's SI projected Alara's rank beneath her name. Fleet Captain, Emissary of Order. Alara turned to the viewport. The rebel fleet, now fully coordinated, flanked the crippled Dominion flagship and its escort vessels. Turrets on. The emissary pivoted outward, leveling centuries-old guns toward their former allies. With a final nod to Rathos, she tapped her comlink. "All wings. Commence assault," she ordered. "Target command bridge secure, it intact. Let no one destroy what we've reclaimed." A roar of engines and weapon fire answered her command. Outside, stars streaked and hulls flared as the battle reached its crescendo. Alara watched with grim satisfaction as the emissary, once a vessel of oppression, turned its guns against the tyrants who built it. The ship's MI spoke then, softer than before. "Thank you, Captain Saren. It is an honor to serve you." Alara allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "The honor's mine," she replied. "Let's bring freedom to the Outer Rim." Let's bring freedom to the Outer Rim. And as the corridors hummed with the footfalls of victors and the fallen alike, Alara knew that this was only the beginning of a new war for liberty, for hope, and for the soul of the galaxy.